Thanks for joining us. We're going to talk all about the Beardsley Zoo in Bridgeport with the executive director, Gregg Dancho. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The zoo is your life.
Yeah, actually has been my life. Yeah, it's
Since you were a little kid, what attracted you to animals?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up in Stratford, and we were right on the Bridgeport border, so Silver Lane, right on the Bridgeport border. I grew up with a family of 7 kids. I was the oldest of 7. We had, for me, luckily, we had in our backyard, which our backyard was 7 acres of land. So it was an old farm. My grandfather's house.
There were animals there, I'm sure.
Yeah, my grandfather's house was there, and my father built a house next to his father's house, and so I had all this land behind the house. So what I would do is I'd come home from school, I'd drop my books off and just go off into the woods, and I'd stay there until dark. And back then, you also had, there was conjoining farms all around us. So not only was it just our piece of property, but there was another property behind us and one to the side. So all over the place, there was just wildlife and wild areas, ponds and streams, and I would just stay out there until my mother called me to come back in.
So what kind of animals did you play with in your youth?
Well, my mother was not happy about this. This was, I started out really enjoying snakes and frogs and turtles. So it was kind of like the, you know, kind of the very stereotypic little boy kind of thing, coming with frogs in his pocket, you know, walking in the door. So my thing was reptiles. I like snakes, so I would go out in our field, and back then you'd have everything out there. We had garter snakes, brown snakes, we had rat snakes, we had black racers. We even had a copperhead at one time. I remember seeing a copperhead when I was a little tiny kid, which are now no longer around. So that's what I did. I bring snakes, I bring them in the house, and I put them in a tank and keep them for a while, and then release them back to where they came from, or they'd release themselves. So I'm pretty sure there's a couple in the house, still in the house, buried someplace there. And my mother was not a fan of reptiles, not snakes at all, none whatsoever. But she knew I really liked it, so even though she hated it, she allowed me to fulfill that need for me to have these things in my house.
So how soon did you find yourself at the Beardsley Zoo in a quasi-official capacity?
Well, official capacity, it was 1975, and before that, again, with 7 kids in the family, my father was a police officer in Stratford, so 7 kids, police officer. You didn't go many places. We didn't, go to the North Shore for vacation. So we had to find things around the neighborhood, around the area. So the zoo at that point was a free facility. You drove right in. You parked in the middle of the zoo. That's what the parking lot was. People don't realize when they come to the zoo now, they look at the roads and realize why are the pathways so wide? It's because they were city streets back then. And so you were able to drive right into the center of the zoo, park there. We'd park there. My father, we'd go into the monkey house, the old monkey house that was there, and my father would tease the monkeys, and I'd be mortified because I was afraid we were going to get kicked out. And then we'd go over play on the little jungle gym they had over there, those little metal rides that were, are banned now because they're too dangerous, but back then you could ride on those little, put the springs on them. And then we go feed the ducks in the pond, and we go home. And so that was our Sundays. We put church in there.
World.
That was our Disney World, exactly. And it was something I always remembered that. And so as I was getting older, and now in high school, I went to Benell High School in Stratford. I was looking to see how could I, get into this profession. I really wanted to be a curator. Again, curator of reptiles. So it would be called a curator of herpetology. And I was really excited about it. And the thing is that I went to the zoo the first time, and I, steeled myself up and went to see the director at the time, and knocked on his door, went inside, and I said, "Well, I'm here. I would like to volunteer here at the zoo. I really enjoy this. I really want to do this." And he said, "There's no volunteer opportunities here at the zoo. We don't have a volunteer program.
Really?
We don't have, at that point, there was no docent program. There was no anything." And I was really crestfallen. I was like, well, that's really what I wanted to do, and it's the only zoo in town. There was no other zoos to go to. So I said, can I go back to my school and ask them if I can get credit for this? So can we make it a program? So it's not me just walking in and asking to volunteer. And even that's today. If somebody walked in and said, I want to volunteer, we always like to be part of a program.
Sure.
So I went back to school. I went in and said, can I get some in-service training credit? And they said, sure, why not? So I went back to the director, said, I can get credit for this. He said, okay, here's a mop, go mop the monkey house floor. And so that was my first real job.
So you were the
zoo.
first?
My first real job at the zoo was mopping the monkey room floor. And that was 1975. So that was a volunteer internship, but even unbeknownst to me, because I wasn't that aware of it, they were about to open up the children's zoo, which was a new facility inside the zoo, which was a farmyard. That was going to be run by the Connecticut Zoological Society. So in 1976, the Connecticut Zoological Society started charging its own admission to get into the children's zoo. And because they charged admission, that meant revenue was coming in. If revenue was coming in, they could hire seasonal employees, summer employees. So that was my first paying job. So from mopping the monkey room floor, monkey house floor, to sweeping goat droppings.
And then
that's where I moved.
You went to college here.
And at the same time, I was going to college, and I was, again, wanted to be in this field. So, but again, had to stay local because, again, the only zoo. So I went to Houston Community College, got my associate's degree in math science, then went on to Southern Connecticut State College back then. It wasn't State University, but it was State College back then, and got my degree in zoology. My undergrad in zoology, and then went through my entire coursework for my master's. And at the same time that I was doing this, a full-time job opened up. So in 1980, I became a full-time keeper at the zoo, and so I started working with the predators, which was again a departure from being reptiles. But working in a facility like ours, the beauty of that is that it's you get to work with everything. I got to work with elephants, I got to work with tigers, I got to work with snakes I really liked. I got to work with every creature, and that way I kind of broadened my interest to where...
So you lived out your dream.
Yeah, really. It really was.
And here you are 40 years later.
40 years later, yeah. It's kind of scary.
Let's go down, it happens fast. Let's go down memory lane a little bit with some shots of you.
Yeah, sure.
In younger days, a few years back.
A few years back, a couple of years.
What are you holding here?
Well, that is Kimby. Kimby is the first Amur tiger, but back then it was Siberian tigers. They changed the name, but back then a Siberian tiger was the first Siberian tiger ever born at Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo, or Beardsley Zoological Gardens as it was known back then, or Beardsley Park Zoo. We've had lots of names. And so Kimby was the first living cub that the zoo had ever had, and actually the first living cub that Connecticut ever had. So we were I was very excited because I was the keeper involved with this. Then so right now, what was interesting is Mom had raised this cub. So what I would do though, however, I'd go in, I'd shift the mom over to the next stall, and I'd go in and I'd interact with the cub. And you want to do that a little bit because you want them to know that we're trustworthy, that we're developing trust patterns here. We're not trying to bond with them. We don't want to make pets out of them. We want them to stay wild animals. But the way Kimby knew that we weren't going to be any threat to them, that was always good.
Isn't that hard to get the mother away from the baby?
It's usually not easy, easy, but usually food driven. So you put food on the other side, and she'd go over and then shift. And then she knew that was not going to be any problem.
Are you an animal whisperer, do you think?
Not an animal whisperer. I think I respect animals a lot. I mean, people always say that when you work with animals, you're either an animal lover of those, and lover kind of is a little bit, I think, strong. Even though I really, really like animals, I think I respect them more than anything else. I respect what they are, I respect what they should be. With Kimby, I used to go in, like I said, and the time that she caught me, and she was running, and I was running, and she was chasing me. She caught me. I said, okay, that's the end of this episode, and let her be a tiger. Right. And she went on to have her own cubs, at the zoo, so I was able to see her grow up and have her own cubs. So to me, that was a very, very special time.
But they are animals, and you have, as you say,
they're
you
wild
have to
animals.
Respect that.
They're exotic animals or wild animals, or whatever when you want to call them. Right. But they all deserve respect. These animals have natural instincts that should be allowed to come forth. And that's one of the things we're trying to do now at the zoo right now.
And then we go to a camel. Is that a camel?
That is a camel. Yeah, that's one of the camels. And so, as I was saying, I went to school for zoology. I went to all my coursework for my master's. So I can consider myself a zoologist. But over the past 40 years of working at the zoo, or 40 plus years, you also have to do things to promote the zoo. So that llama was actually in one of the parades.
Oh, it wasn't a camel, it was a llama.
Yeah, that was a llama that was in one of the parades. We took it on the street, and I was able to halt. We had a halter broken, so we took it down the street to promote the zoo. So you have to be a little P.T. Barnum-ish, a little bit. It is P.T. Barnum's hometown, so you got to be a little bit. You got to balance it quite a bit.
And he used to bring his animals there, right?
Yeah, that is the I'll say the legend, because we can't really prove it for a fact. We have some things, but the circus would winter at Went Field, which was just down by the railroad tracks in downtown Bridgeport, and Beardsley Park was the only area that had a lot of land. So what was told is that they put them in trailers and bring them up to run them around in a large area. Beardsley Park is also a Frederick Law Olmsted designed park, so it's got a lot of history.
On the
there.
National Historic Register.
Yeah. So the legend is that the Barnum Circus used to bring the animals up there just to get their legs. In fact, one of the interesting stories. There's many stories, but one of the interesting stories, I got a call from what we call the SSP program, a Species Survival Plan, and I was told that Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo had the first giraffe born on record for the United States.
Really?
And I was like, wow, that is really cool. However, we've never had giraffe. Ever.
So that was lore.
So what turned out to be was the giraffe was born at the circus, and they just moved the records over from the circus to the zoo because the zoo was right there. So.
Now Beardsley's about to be 100 years old in 2022.
22, yep, 2022. Yeah.
And so you're gearing up for that.
We're gearing up for that. We've got a lot of things on our plate right now. Many, many, many things on our plate, and a lot of new construction, a lot of new programs. And there's a lot of things that are, being there so long, I have a bucket list now. I never thought I'd say I have a bucket list.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting, but I do have a bucket list.
Of things that you want.
At the zoo, yeah, what I want at the zoo. Well, there's like three things. One of them is we had elephants at the zoo, like I mentioned before. Well, when I became director in 1983, one of the first things to do was to get rid of the elephant. The elephant was not something that the zoo should have. It's too small an area.
How many acres do you have?
We have 33 acres, but the elephant was in a very small area. It was really something that I think my staff, myself, a lot of people felt it was just not right to have that elephant there. And so it took some time to get a home for her. And again, you're in P.T. Barnum's hometown, so there was a little pushback saying why is the place where circus Emperor Scenario was there, and now you're getting rid of an elephant? Well, again, you go back and say, there's the reasons. There's animal welfare. There's all kinds of things why it was moved. So we moved her out, and so that old elephant yard was a part of the area that we've done work over time and have tried to do some. We had capybara in there, which is the world's largest rodent. We had warthogs in there for a short period of time. We had a giant anteater. We've had Chicoan peccary. We've had a bunch of animals in there, but it's not been a permanent thing. It's been kind of a changing area. So we decided we want to build a better habitat for something and that people like, and that we also have a conservation message. Everything at the zoo should have a conservation message. If we're bringing animals in, they should have a conservation message, or should be needing help. They should be an endangered species that needs support.
We've come a long way with zoos.
Well, so right now we're changing it over to a spider monkey habitat that'll be opening up this summer.
Oh, there you
go. So we're really excited. So that's one of those bucket list items.
So you're going to be 100 years old in 2022. Is it among the oldest zoos in the country?
We are not the old. We are in that genre of the oldest zoos in the United States. There are some older ones.
Who's number one?
Well, don't we want to start that? That'll start a fight. That'll start a fight right now.
So they're in the neighborhood.
Well, Roger Williams Park Zoo and Philadelphia Zoo fight all the time to say who's the oldest.
So
but we're right in that top. We're in that top tier of being the oldest facilities in the country. And we're the only one in Connecticut. There used to be 5 of them in Connecticut.
I did not know that.
And they've all gone away. Most of them are municipality run. We were municipality run. We were run by the city of Bridgeport for 20 years. We went private. So I think that's one of the best things that could have ever happened to the zoo. We went private, and now all the support and all the work that we do stays at the zoo.
Back to you. Let's see some more pictures. What's going on here?
Oh, well, okay. This is a more recent picture. This is our last group of tigers that were born at the zoo, Amur tigers. We had 3 tigers born on tax day about 16 years ago now, and mom raised them. They did great. And we kept them all around. And the interesting thing here is that they get to know you. So as you walk over, they get to say hello. But when they were born, they were about 2.5 pounds. And so this is a picture of showing them how big tigers get within a very short period of time.
Wow.
The tigers we have now at the zoo were born a year ago. So we had a pair of tigers that we had to hand rear. We have 2 girls, Rika and Zaya. Born at 1.5 pounds, they're underweight, and right now, in a year's time, they're about 200 pounds now.
Oh my gosh. And then here you are with the snake, which
again, snake,
which you prefer.
Yeah, well, it's again, it's I did start out there. This is a boa constrictor, and again, this is in a parade in Bridgeport, going down Main Street. The sign over there, Beardsley Zoo in South America, and the reason for that sign is because we had just opened the New World Tropics building. This is the old monkey house that I used to mop the floor. We were able to get funding to recreate it into a habitat for South American exhibits. So that's over 20 years ago. That was constructed, and we're proud of that building because it's done a lot of good work for education and conservation.
A lot of the folks who have not been to the zoo, and you need to go, what, you have about 200,000 a year or so?
A little over, yeah, about 250, 270.
Okay,
yeah.
so you have a carousel there.
Yep.
Which I did not know. We've got a picture of that.
Yep.
Quite beautiful.
Yeah, we have, when we look at the zoo, we're an accredited member of AZA, which is Association of Zoos and Aquariums. There's only about 220 accredited zoos and aquariums in the country. And to be an accredited zoo, you have to uphold some certain tenets. And the tenets we uphold are conservation. So if we're working with our endangered species, and also working with our pollinator gardens and river cleanups and everything local also. So we do national, international, and local conservation programs. So that's a major part of being an accredited member of AZA. Second is education. We're trying to teach our young people that these things are important. The conservation, the environmental issues, Earth Day today being a great day for getting that message out. So education is really one of the cornerstones. The other one is research. We want to learn about our animals all the time, so that's what we're doing. That's how we were able to raise our tiger cubs, doing very well now, where years ago you would get maybe a third of the chance of them surviving. Now our staff does very well because we've learned how to do it well. And the fourth reason is recreation, because a lot of those things I just talked about, conservation, education, research, that's not what I went to the zoo when I was a kid for. That was, my family took us out because it was a fun day to go to get out into, let them run around, get some excitement, see some things that they enjoy, and then take them home and fall asleep. So when we look at the carousel has really 2 meanings. One, it fulfills a recreational component, but it's also a historical component. This is one of the reasons why I was very excited to have a carousel up at the zoo, because we have a museum of the old horses from the Pleasure Beach carousel that was in Bridgeport.
Sure.
So these are about 70 antique wood hand-carved horses that are in a museum setting up at the zoo, in the carousel building.
Do you own it, or are they on loan?
They are actually are on loan from the city of Bridgeport.
Okay.
So even though we went private, the city of Bridgeport still owns those. So we're displaying them for the city of Bridgeport, and then we put a working carousel for the kids to enjoy, like you would have at Pleasure Beach.
And then years ago, somebody moved a Victorian greenhouse onto the land.
Well, actually, the Victorian Greenhouse predates the zoo. Very interesting how the zoo came about. In 1922 was when the zoo was instituted, but in 1898 the greenhouse was put on ground. This is a
We've got a picture of what you have in there now.
Yeah, this is a Lord and Burn greenhouse. This was a cypress greenhouse, the original one, and the potting shed were both original. Over time, the cypress greenhouse has been replaced, and we added a new wing. So we have 2 wings on the greenhouse. The center structure, which is called the potting shed, is still the original, back in 1898. It was the original piece of property, thing on the property. I mean, when you came to the zoo back then, that was it. There wasn't a zoo. It was the greenhouse. So that is a really interesting and important facet of the zoo's operation, because plants are a big part of what we do and what we need. You know, it's just as animals, plants, people, we all got to work together. So the greenhouse is very important for us. It's we call it the Victorian. It's a Victorian style greenhouse because the potting shed was built in the Victorian style. We've now have many different plants on the exhibit side of North America, South America, and
Tropical.
we have orchids. We're also a plant rescue station. If somebody comes into one of the airports and happens to bring an orchid or an aloe or something that they're not supposed to bring in from another country, you can't bring it in for quarantine and for bringing plants in. You're not supposed to do that. It's against the law. Those plants used to be thrown on a refuse pile, and now they're given to us, and we can keep them in the greenhouse. So we're actually rescuing endangered plants along with endangered species. So the greenhouse is a really cool place.
So you mentioned a bucket list in this last picture, New England farmland reimagination. Is that part of the bucket list?
Yes,
What is this?
Yes, there is two major things on the bucket list, and one of them is our tiger habitat, which we are working on right now because, as we saw the picture a few minutes ago, I was there when our first tiger cub was ever born. So I want to see our tiger habitat reimagined and redone, and right now we have an zoo architect that's working at to increase the size of it at least twice, at least double the size, much bigger areas, much more areas for the animals to enjoy. So that is one of the things that we're actually halfway through our budget, our financial goal for that. So I'm excited about that.
You can always use funds.
Always use. Oh no, so we are a
there.
nonprofit. We are a nonprofit. We always use funds.
BeardsleyZoo.com.
And as I mentioned before, my first paying job was in the New England Farmer. In 1976, it was built. So we've done work in there, but we haven't done a major work in there. So right now we've closed that farmyard down, and we are right now doing this reimagination of the farmyard. It is a farmyard. We work with endangered species in the farmyard also. People don't realize that there are endangered species of domestic animals.
Like?
So we have in the farmyard we used to have a Dexter cow. Dexter cows are a minor breed. We have guinea hogs. Guinea hogs are a small breed of pig, and they were brought over years ago when people were moving from the old world to the new world. When you did that, you didn't bring a 700-pound hog with you because it would eat you out of house and home before you got halfway across the Atlantic. So what you did is you got these small, called mini pigs. We don't like calling them mini pigs, but they're a smaller breed. And they ate scraps, they ate everything, and still would give you enough meat to survive. So guinea hogs came over, and they were a big staple of people having them in the backyard, kind of as the meat on potatoes, like a victory garden. You know, you would have your own garden, you have your own livestock, and you had something that wasn't going to eat so much that it didn't give you a return on investment. Well, over time, we don't have those type of farms around anymore. Family farms are really, well, actually, they're coming back into vogue a little bit.
Yeah, they are, but there were thousands of them.
But there were thousands. So the guinea hogs, people weren't using anymore, because if you're going to have a pig, you're going to get the ones that grow very large, very quickly.
Sure.
You need a small pig. So these actually became endangered species. We call them heritage breeds. And so Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo actually has been a major part of bringing these domestic endangered species back from the brink of extinction, which you wouldn't think of a domestic animal extinct, but these were going to become extinct. So we went to a long process of breeding these animals and making sure that we moved them over to other zoos. And so right now, guinea hogs are back on the track of, they're vulnerable, but not as bad as they were. So even though you have, again, domestic, you still have an endangered species. So there's an education even in the farmyard. I'm excited about the farmyard reimagination. It's always in our top 5 people polled what they like about the zoo. They like the farmyard. We are in Bridgeport. It's still an urban area, you know. So I think the farmyard is worth a lot of time to get it right. So
after 4 decades at Beardsley, you're being given an endowed chair. What does that mean to you?
Well, an endowed chair is I'm very happy about this.
Honor.
It's an honor for me. I really appreciate it. What we're trying to do here is look to the future. You know, I've been there 40 plus years. Not sure, you know, what's going to be in the future, what's coming up down the line. We do have an endowment at the zoo. The endowment is there for a rainy day. It's there for improvement of the zoo. It's there to support the facility. But not many people give to an endowment. It's not something you give to. So what we did, what we've decided, my staff and board looked at doing an endowed chair, so we can have money be put in my name into this endowment, so the zoo can last for another 100 years. And that to me is pretty important. I mean, I've spent over 45 years, almost 45 years working there. The zoo is going to be 100 years in 3 more years. So almost half of its existence, I've been a part of the zoo. So I really would like to make sure that the zoo moves on to the future. And its future is going to be interesting, because right now, we've always done great animal welfare, but animal welfare is now the key thing that we want people to understand. This is what we're there for. This is why we're there. We've had golden lion tamarins in our rainforest released back to the wild. We've had Indian condors released back to the wild. We've had red wolves released back to the wild. That's a zoo person's dream, is to have animals put back to where they came from. It's very, very rare and very, very difficult to do, but when it happens, it makes you feel really good. Our new red panda habitat that we constructed last year.
And you've got live cameras out there too.
Yeah, we do. We have on our cubs, our Amur leopard cubs, and our pandas. The Nat family red panda habitat is built right now in that vogue, where we want the animals. The red pandas are cold weather animals, so in our summers here, it gets hot and humid. They don't really enjoy that too much. However, we built a habitat for them that they can go inside to an air-conditioned room and chill out, pun intended. But if they want to go outside, they can. So we've given them free choice. We've given them wherever they want to go, whatever they want to do, go at it, to have fun. The new spider monkey habitat, same thing. It'll be reversed though. In the wintertime, they'll be inside, in the summertime being out. But again, if they want to go outside for a little breath of fresh air, they're going to be allowed to move everywhere they want to go. So we're excited about this, the new things we're building at the zoo.
How far along at Beardsley did you know this is going to be my life's work right here? I mean, you could have left, you could have gone somewhere else.
Yeah, again, when I was mentioned before, my dream job back then was a curator of reptiles, so it wasn't a director. I looked at people who were directors and said, okay, you're not really working with animals anymore. You're working with people, you're working with money, you're working with plans, you're working with, and you have all that to do. A lot of people, again, with zoos, all the 4 things I mentioned before, but now you're worrying about safety, you're worried about guest safety, staff safety, you're worrying about making sure that we have enough revenue to maintain, the standards that we want to. So, yeah, that wasn't really the career path I was looking for, but it's one I feel very strongly that, because I'm a homegrown person and I'm proud of what we've done. I don't think I had a chance to move one time, and it didn't pan out. And at that point, I decided that this is where I was going to go. And as long as we were going to move forward, as long as we were going to get support, as long as I knew, and again, personally, because this has been a place I've been there so many years, that I felt we were doing the right things for the animals and doing the right things for our guests, that there would be no reason for me to leave. All right, you brought something with you, and we're going to show the folks. I think that was called, what do they call that, when the foreshadowing? I think I foreshadowed that enough. So you have brought what? This is a California king snake. And one of the things that, like I said before, this is one of the things that was my passion when I was growing up. Still continues to be something I'm very fascinated with and interested in. This snake actually came to us as a drop-off. Somebody found it in the street in Bridgeport. Even though it's a California king. So people have these as pets, and a lot of times they don't know what to do with them. They're great escape artists, so it could have escaped. It could have been, people have to feed it mice. They could have said, I'm not paying for the mice feed, and just let it go. Nonetheless, when we got it, it was about a third of the size it is now. It was in really poor condition. We were able to, get it back to health. I don't want to touch the head, but I will. Take the head here. It's an amazing snake. It is amazing. This is strong. This is very strong. This is a constrictor. So this animal squeezes its prey, suffocates that's what I was worried about. Not big enough to hurt anybody. They're called king snakes because they will actually eat other snakes. So you cannot put the snake in with other snakes. It will eat them. And I suppose people have learned that the hard way. Yes, they have. So you've always loved snakes, and I know people that just don't like snakes at all. Don't even like to look at them, see them. And one of the things I guess that excites me is that normally what I'll do is I'll come out with people. I'll either be in, let's say, in Hartford. I'll be at the zoo. I'll bring a snake out. There's some people that are afraid of snakes, so let's go back to what we said before: conservation, education. Right? Snakes are important as part of the living things on our planet. There's reasons for them to be here. Let's educate on why people are afraid of snakes. And I'll do this with the kids. Why are people afraid of snakes? They bite. They're slimy, they're sneaky. It's all that. So we go through all that kind of stuff, and then I'd say, well, here's the reason why you shouldn't be afraid of the snake. And if I can get one child that was afraid of snakes to go and touch it, like a news anchor that was able to touch a snake, then I feel that I've done my job, because people have that misconception. And so hopefully the next time they see a snake in their driveway or in their garden. They don't take the garden hoe and chop it up because they think it's an evil thing.
They set it free.
Yeah, they set it free.
Gregg Dancho, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann,
There's
I appreciate
a big
it.
reason why you're the executive director there. You've done a lot for the zoo. Thanks
Thank you so much.
for coming
Thank
out.
you. Thank you.
Spend all night kissing and if one was right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked if I'm as a wishing to find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Things to keep locked in the grocery store, but mine just to save time. I'll skip right ahead to the last ride.